Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today, we discuss the Emperor of Mankind founding the Officio Assassinorum we know today. A spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from the Horus Heresy novel Nemesis by author James Swallow. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that out the way, let's waste no time and just jump straight in. Okay, so over the course of last week, we discussed the impact of the Officio Assassinorum within the Horus Heresy, how the Order of the Execution Force actually originated thanks to the War Master, and how people like Rho were vehemently opposed to the use of assassins within the war. And although it isn't needed for today's conversation, I do recommend going back and giving those previous uploads a listen before continuing on. However, regardless, so it was the Assassinorum pulled together all of its clades to dispatch its first ever execution force to eliminate the War Master, a move that actually was inspired by the suggestion of Constantine Valdor, though largely set in motion by the ever-scheming Malcador, the face behind the mask of the Master of Assassins. I know, what a shock. And the main premise of the novel Nemesis is following the execution force upon their mission, and if you've never read that one, I cannot recommend it enough. It's an absolutely fantastic read, definitely one that deserves a bit more attention in my mind. But obviously, through the various events of the story, the execution force doesn't manage to achieve its objective and take out the War Master. And this results in a heated argument back upon the throne world, as the Council of Assassins meets once again, many of them throwing blame at Constantine Valdor for even suggesting the notion in the first place. And you may think, well, what's the big deal here? A couple of lives in the context of the galaxy-wide war is not exactly the end of the world. However, an assassin is a hugely precious resource for each clade. A massive investment of time and commitment, not to mention they are very limited in number. So losing one is a very big deal, not to mention an entire team in one go. And doubly so if the loss is on a mission that wasn't even successful. So it is at least understandable why the masters of the clades would be unhappy, though they obviously knew the risk. And it's then, within this bickering meeting, that an alarm begins to sound, an unauthorized intruder breaking into the meeting, who's revealed to be none other than the Imperial Fist Primarch Rho. And Rho's angry, always having been opposed to the notions of assassins in the war, and he demands the Council of Assassins remove their masks, correctly calling out its master, Malcador. Though again, honestly, did anyone really think it wouldn't be the Sigillite? But Rho then reveals the reason for his interruption. The arrival of the execution force's empty vessel returned into orbit, containing a Vox recording of the mission from the Vindicare team leader, which of course Rho has listened to. And after playing it for the council, it all erupts into more arguments, with Rho convinced the use of assassins will only make things worse, that they should oppose working within the shadow for the sake of the Imperium's future, that they need to be better than the enemy. And when Valdor counters with, "We will lose unless we match him blow for blow," Rho erupts with, "I am not Horus." and a single booming word cuts him off in response, silencing the entire room. The single utterance was a lightning bolt captured in crystal, shattering everything around it, silencing them all with an unstoppable, immeasurable force of will. Rogel Dawn turned to the sound of that voice, as every man, woman and Astartes in the chamber sank to their knees, each of them instinctively knowing who had uttered it. The Sigillite was the last to do so, shooting a final, unreadable look at the Primarch of the Imperial Fists before he too took to a show of obeisance. The question escaped Dawn's lips. Father. The darkness, the great curtain of shadows that had filled the furthest corner of the chamber, now became lighter, the walls and floor growing more distinct by the moment as the unnatural gloom faded. He blinked. Strange how he had looked directly into that place and seen it, but without ever really seeing it at all. It had been in plain sight for everyone in the room, even he, and yet none of them had registered the strangeness of it. Now from the black came light. A figure stood there, effortlessly dominating the space, his patrician features marred by a mixture of turbulent emotions that gave even the mighty Imperial Fist a second's pause. The Emperor of Mankind wore no armour, no finery or dress uniform, only a simple surplice of grey cloth threaded with subtle lines of purple and gold silk. And yet, he was still magnificent to behold. Perhaps he had been listening to them all along, yet it seemed to be a defiance of the laws of nature, that a being so majestic, so lit with power, could stand in a room among men, Astartes, and the greatest mortal psychers who ever lived, and be as a ghost. But then he was the Emperor, and to all questions, that was sufficient answer. Now, that shadow had occupied the room the entire time, and so it begs the question of, has the Emperor been there all along? As it certainly seems to be the case. Of course, physically we know he is upon the Golden Throne, but psychically his presence is absolutely within the room. And so it shows that while Malcador has always claimed to keep the Assassinorum's activities apart from the Emperor in principle, the reality is maybe the Emperor has always been aware of it. Because surely there is no way Malcador wouldn't know or feel the presence of the Emperor, the most powerful psyker ever to grace the galaxy, not to mention his closest friend, for countless centuries. So of course Malcador knew, in my opinion. And I think you get a hint of that in the unreadable look that he shoots Rogel as he bows down. That look saying, look what you've done with your interruption. Forced the Emperor to reveal himself and intercede. And it's Rogel declaring, I am not Horus, that maybe reveals the inner truth of Rogel's vehement opposition, his fear of how or why his brother of all of them could have fallen, of knowing the truth. So he will do anything to prove he is not the same, and I think it's no wonder the Emperor interrupted then, because he knows the thoughts that go through Rogel's mind. His father came towards him, and Rogel Dawn bowed deeply, at length joining the others at bended knee before the master of the Imperium. The Emperor did not speak. Instead, he strode across the shrouds to the tall windows where the sailcloth drapes hung like frozen cataracts of shadow. With a flick of his great hands, Dawn's father took a fist of the cloth and snatched it away. The hangings tore free and tumbled to the floor. He walked the perimeter of the room, ripping away every last cover until the chamber was flooded with the bright honey-yellow luminosity of the Himalayan dawn. Rogel dared to glance up and saw the golden radiance striking his father. It gathered its brightness to him, as if it were an embrace. For an instant, the sunlight was like a sheath of glowing armour upon him. Then the Primarch blinked, and the moment passed. "No more shadows," said the Emperor. His words were gentle, summoning, and all the faces in the room turned to look upon him. He placed a hand on Dawn's shoulder as he passed him by, and then repeated the gesture with Valdor. No more veils. He beckoned them all to stand, and as one they obeyed, and yet in his presence each of them felt as if they were still at his feet. His aura towered over them, filling the emotions of the room. Dawn received a nod, as did Valdor. "My noble son, my loyal guardian, I hear both your words, and I know that there is right in each of you. We cannot lose sight of what we are and what we aspire to be. But we cannot forget that we face the greatest enemy and the darkest challenge." In the depths of his father's eyes, Dawn saw something no one else could have perceived. So transient and fleeting, it barely registered. He saw sorrow, deep and unending, and his heart ached with an empathy only a son could know. The Emperor reached out a hand and gestured towards the dawn, as it rose to fill the room around them. "It is time to bring you into the light. The Officio Assassinorum have been my quiet blade for too long, an open secret none dared speak of. But no longer. Such a weapon cannot exist forever in the shadow, answerable to no one. It must be seen to be governed. There must be no doubt of the integrity behind every deed, every blow landed, every choice made. Or else we count for naught." His gaze turned to Dawn, and he nodded slowly to his son. "Because of this I am certain. In the war to come, every weapon in the arsenal of the Imperium will be called to bear." And so, this was how the Officio Assassinorum was brought into the light, made a known and official part of the Imperium forevermore. With the Emperor here kind of taking the best of both worlds between Valdor and Rogel's argument, accepting that they do need to do things differently, different to the powers that they face, but while equally needing to use every weapon that they have, that they can. So they will use the weapons of the assassin, but they will no longer act and pretend that they don't. It must be seen to be as accountable and as just as the rest of the Imperium. Now, I'm not sure it still holds to the purest of ideals in the current grim dark, all those 10,000 years later, but it certainly does retain the hallmarks of the Emperor's proclamation here. The Grand Master of Assassins known, not a secret, and the actions accountable to the High Lords of Terror. As it should be. And it's a little moment of connection with Rogel here too, between father and son. Not only with him noticing that brief look of grief in the Emperor's eye, but also how the Emperor essentially says to him, "You're right, we do need to do things differently, to not betray and compromise our own ideals. There must be no doubt of integrity behind every deed, every blow landed, every choice made. or else we count for naught. His gaze turned to Dawn, and he slowly nodded to his son. It's a great little example of how the Emperor can and does listen to his sons, to the Primarchs, how their presence and opinion does have weight with him, that he listens and takes it on board, as he has done with Malcador over the centuries, that he is not a shell, emotionless, that he is indeed human. Perhaps one of the Emperor's greatest traits, that for all his power, and yes, for all his stubbornness as well, there are those times that he does listen and adapt his plans. I guess how different the galaxy might have been had he done that with the Webway project. However, that's a conversation for another day. So this is the way that the Emperor cast his judgment upon the Assassinorum, bringing the institution out of the shadow and into the light, making it the Assassinorum that it would go on to be. And so as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think of the Emperor's decision here? Was he right to listen to Rogol, and equally to Valdor? Or do you think maybe he should have taken one side over the other? Is the fact that he sometimes listens to those around him his best trait? And should he have done that more frequently? Or maybe do you disagree, and that he should have simply been more authoritative, simply done what he thought best? And was bringing the Assassinorum into more of the Imperial structure the right move to make? Did it need to be accountable, seen to be judged along with the rest of the Imperium? Or should it have been kept a complete and total secret? An institution whispered about, but never known for sure. As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.